Welcome back. Mr. Zaki, how do you see the shape of the upcoming administration? I mean, when you look at it, you see some contradictions. It seems that the different members of the administration have quite contradictory views about key issues like racism, Islam, Guantanamo, foreign policy. I mean, how do you see the government shaping up?
Contradictory views, even with Trump himself.
Exactly.
I believe that there is an explanation to what you are asking about. If you take a look to the general atmosphere in the United States now, you will be shocked. There is a sort of hysterical mood, a sort of a war-like preparations. Now they are talking about Donald Trump as Putin's puppet, the Russian president. They are talking about how Russia managed to put Donald Trump in the White House. They're talking in the American media now about Trump as the man who will raise the Russian flag on the Capitol. So it's a real madness, what is going on.
Yes.
Of course, the Cold War warriors are very active now. They are warning Donald Trump, if you try to improve relations with Russia, you will be a traitor. And maybe in this case, we will think about impeachment to you as a president. If you follow what the Wall Street Journal is writing now, Washington Post, New York Times, the main media of the neoconservatives, you will be shocked, because as if there will be a real war tomorrow. In the same time, you must notice another thing which is very strange. To the last moment, President Barack Obama is trying to put mines in the way of Donald Trump, making obstacles. For example, a decision to make new economic sanctions against Russia, to send more troops to the Russian borders. There are I heard a number 4,000, another number 8,000. Estonia, Lithuania, on the Russian borders. At the same time, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, it means the National Security Agency, all the three made a report saying that, yes, Russia hacked the presidential elections and all the electronic sites of the elections, in particular that of the Democratic Party. If you ask, are there any proofs? Where are such proofs? No proofs. Just blah, blah, blah.
Just talk.
This information, without any even details how it happened. At first, Donald Trump said, you have no evidence. Now, here is my answer to your question. Recently, yesterday, he was obliged to say, yes, I think that the Russians hacked the Democratic Election Committee of this Posada, you know, the man of the Democratic Party who was supervising that committee. It means that the war which was declared against against Trump, is succeeding. Maybe you will ask me, are there any probability, or is it possible that he is trying to retreat in front of this huge campaign till he, until tomorrow, goes to the
White House?
White House?
And then what?
I don't know. The next coming days will prove if it is like that, or maybe we are imagining something which is not true. But the problem is that, for example, another example, how he is retreating. He pledged during all his campaign, and even after his after winning the elections, he said that he will improve the relations with Russia, and that his main point is to cooperate with Russia against terrorism.
Yes.
Good. Since 2 days, before yesterday, he said, yes, we can make relations with Russia, but we have to make, first of all, a deal concerning nuclear arms. This is new. He didn't say it before. At the same time, as you mentioned, the man who was nominated by him as the foreign minister, as the state secretary, declared that, yes, Russia is a danger. That's new, because Trump never said so. On the contrary, he said that if Putin likes him, it's an asset for the United States of America and for himself. Asset. So now, your Secretary of State is saying something different. Quite different. I believe that the real problem is, to speak frankly, now you have the CIA struggling against Trump. As I told you, the FBI... and
even with the new CIA director, he has Mike Pompeo is supposed to be...
Yes, because it is not a matter of the director of the CIA. It's a matter of that there are now, as you see, how many... I want to remind you that Trump has suggested that he may reduce the bloated CIA and another 16 U.S. intelligence agencies that spend over $70 billion every year. It means that such agencies will lose the prestige, will lose officials working in such agencies. They will lose their job. At the same time, there is a loud cry among the supporters of Donald Trump that for the first time since the end of the Second World War, to change the whole system in the United States of America. How? To change the United States of America from a national security state to a constitutional republic state. Why? Because they say we were obliged as Americans to establish this security, national security state, because of we were threatened by the Soviet Union, there was a Cold War, and so it's finished. Now we are not threatened by anybody. There is no Soviet Union. Putin is ready to cooperate with America against terrorism. So what? Why we are making all this fuss? About what? This is the real problem, because I want also to remind you that the industrial military complex mentioned by General Eisenhower, the late president of the 50s, now we have to remind what he said. He warned the American people, take care. This industrial military complex is dominating all the affairs going on in the United States. Take care, because they will lead you to another war.
And is this industrial military complex, is it that complex that put the current president in office?
Except Donald Trump. All the
didn't
presidents, except why? Because Donald Trump came from outside the establishment, came from outside the elite.
This is against the norm there.
Remember the following. During the elections, Wall Street, all the huge companies, all the big banks, all the military, industrial military complex,
All the media.
supported, all the media supported Hillary Clinton. So the man, and that's why
How did he conquer all this?
I'll tell you now. I believe that there is something very significant, new in the United States of America. Always there, some people used to talk about the ignorant majority among the people who doesn't understand politics and so. For the first time in the history of the United States of America after 1945, the end of the Second World War, in spite of the fact that the elite or the establishment used to select on behalf of the American people who will be the next president, this time the American voters voted on the contrary of what the establishment and the elite wanted them to vote for the first time. That's why we say that this man came from outside this establishment, and that's why he said to them, to his voters during the campaign, why we are making a war in Syria, for example.
Is it because he is
We have no problem with
against,
Bashar. He said so.
Is it a political position, or is he calculating it, the businessman here is calculating it financially, that the United States economy has been exhausted with the numerous wars it has entered?
What you are saying now is very important. I'll tell you, you are correct. Why? First of all, Trump told his voters that we are spending a lot of money abroad, sending armies here and there, fighting here and there. Why? We are not threatened by anybody. Now, as you know, the United States of America has 800 bases around the world. Why? 800. Second, spending $800 billion just to maintain the military arsenal. Decided to spend $1 trillion in the next years to develop the nuclear arsenal. Why all that? You can make tomorrow an agreement, as Trump himself said recently, with the Russians to reduce this nuclear arms. Russia and America both to reduce their nuclear arms. And there are good opportunities to achieve this goal, this aim. Why not? But the problem is that, don't forget, about between 30 and 40 industrial military company in the United States of America headed by Lockheed Martin. I'll tell you an example. They want the expansion of NATO. They want a real Cold War. And they have no objection that this Cold War turn to be a real war. Why? When those countries in Eastern Europe decided to join NATO, they took a decision at the same time to modernize their arms. The profits of Lockheed Martin were more than 200 billion of dollars. They don't want to lose such huge profits. That's why it's in their interest to have all the time tension, international tension, Cold War, in confrontation with Russia, so as they have the pretext to produce more arms and sell more and more arms to gain more and more profits. That's the real reason.
We have a phone call on the line, and maybe since you're talking about the creation of problems to justify armament spending, one of the problems is terrorism.
Yeah.
And let's hold that thought while we get the following phone call. With us on the line is His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Higazi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Your Excellency, can you hear us?
Yes, of course, Dina. Greetings for you and your guests.
The upcoming American administration, well, we tend to see some of the prominent names. And as we were talking in the studio, some of those names are quite contradictory in their stance, even towards President-elect Donald Trump, as Mr. Zaki was just saying. But if we have a National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, who is the one that's nominated, who labeled, for example, Islam as cancer, and he said that we are at war with that religion. You have someone else, CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who said he is against the closing of Guantanamo, for example. You have Jeff Sessions, who is the Attorney General, who is very much known for his racist stance on a lot of issues. Taking this into account, what kind of an administration are you expecting to see? And more importantly, how will it be dealing with this part of the world, which is really our concern?
I understand your concern, Dina, and you have all the right to have this concern, but it is only the day after tomorrow till the President-elect Trump will sworn in on the 20th, so that we have to check on all the slogans and acclamation that has been pronounced during the campaign. Don't forget that campaigning is something and real politique is something else. I'm sure that a lot will maybe remain in the heart and mind. In reality, things will change. I believe that the new administration or President-elect Trump, till day after tomorrow, as he surprised many in his drive toward the White House, we might also see a surprising attitude and a genuine policies that might help first in curbing on terrorism, as you referred in your intro. And I am sure that this chapter is settled. And if the United States have adopted a different approach towards terrorism, a lot of the crises and conflicts, particularly in our region, will find it settled. So the Egyptian policy and the overall or comprehensive approach to terrorism will meet with the strategies referred to in the early slogans of this new elected administration. Second, I agree with you that many of the slogans that has been described as ethnic offensive has been altered in the course of the campaign, particularly regarding the Latins, regarding the Arabs and Muslims. And I'm sure that reality will force cooperation. Reality will teach whoever comes with different view that there is a lot of concern in many parts of the world, even in Europe, not only in the Middle East or Latin America, but also in Europe. And the new administration has to answer to that. There is a lot to work with the international community that this isolated and offensive policies will not lead to any success. I'm sure that this new administration will regard the strategic interests of the country, and the reality will prevail over slogans.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Mohammed Zaki, thank you very much for your input. Before we took our phone call, we were discussing the issue of the flow of money or profit in arms deal, so to speak. And since this is quite a lucrative industry, and maybe one of the questions that raise itself, one of the entities, one of the major entities that buy those arms happen to be those different militant terrorist factions which have surfaced all over this region. Can we expect the upcoming US administration to stand and fight really against those militant factions? Because in the past, we cannot say the fight has been genuine. And I'm trying to find the most diplomatic expressions that one can use in this. For example, now that we have a CIA director that, or will be having, a director that clearly labeled the Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, which is something we have not heard the current US administration using. Will we see a different position, a more unified stance in face of those terrorists that we suffer from every day?
From this point of view, what you mentioned now, I agree with you 100%. And by the way, concerning this aspect of what is going on, I mean, all such events, I am optimistic. Why? I believe that Donald Trump is serious in fighting against terrorism. Serious in fighting against not only ISIS or Al-Qaeda, but also the Muslim Brotherhood. And I remember, and you remember, that after the meeting between our president and Trump in New York last year, the advisor of Trump made a declaration that if Trump will win, we will include the Muslim Brotherhood in the list of terrorist organizations. And I believe that he will do it. But the problem is, and by the way, I expect also a sort of cooperation between the United States of America and Russia to achieve a peaceful political settlement in Syria. That's what I believe. But the problem now is the internal war inside the United States against Donald Trump. I'll tell you some of the comments of some prominent U.S. commentators. They are talking about the worst crisis in the history of the United States.
The worst crisis is the election of
the outcome of this election. They consider they say that the United States of America is entering extraordinary, dangerous times. They say that the neo-conservatives' total war on Trump put the United States at very grave risk, including civil war. They are not exaggerating, because they feel what all this elite, this establishment, this industrial military complex are doing, how they are fighting against Trump, to the extent that some American commentators are afraid that maybe something will take place in the same day of the inauguration of Donald Trump. For example, fabricating something, terrorists, or a sort of clash with some Russian soldiers here or there, so as to make a world crisis, something like that. To that extent, they are afraid. So the problem is not Donald Trump, because I believe that some of what he said during the campaign, he will not fulfill.
He will not fulfill.
For example.
Not fulfill because it's campaign talk, or not fulfill because he will not be allowed to fulfill?
No, I'll give you an example, 2 examples. He said that he will cancel the nuclear agreement with Iran. He will not. He will not.
His CIA director is against the Iran deal.
He cannot, because it is not a bilateral agreement between the United States of America and Iran. There are European states.
There are other parties in the deal.
Second, he said that he will build a wall on the borders of Mexico. I believe that he will not. Third, he will not permit Muslims, but he
reneged on the comment afterwards. Yes.
He will try to check those who enter the United States so as to be sure that they are not extremists or terrorists. That's all that.
When you say they're not extremists or terrorists, does that mean anyone that is part of the Brotherhood will not be allowed to enter the United States?
If there is a record about him in the security organs of the United States of America.
And now that we have Pompeo in office, do you think this will maybe push forth, because he's against the Brotherhood?
Yes, he will. I believe that he will fulfill what Trump promised during the campaign.
And on this wavelength, they are in agreement. They're both seeing eye to eye on this issue.
Also, to be more optimist, I expect that there will be a real cooperation between the United States of America and Egypt during the Trump administration. The problem is, let us speak frankly.
Yes.
If there is a real Arab League now in this region, they have to move quickly. I'll tell you why. I don't know if you know or not that Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, demanded 12 times a meeting with Trump, till now, 12 times.
No, I didn't know that.
No reaction from Trump. Why? Because he wanted him to pledge again that he will fulfill his promise, that he will move the American embassy to Jerusalem, and other steps like that. The Arab League must make a delegation to meet Trump.
To?
More than that, if we can make a delegation of at least some Arab presidents to go and meet Trump so as to convince him with just one fact. You, Trump, are serious in combating terrorism. The Israeli occupation in this region encouraged terrorism, not the contrary. This extremism of Israel is very dangerous and is very encouraging to give a push to extremism and terrorism. So please help us to get rid of this problem, to solve this problem for the sake of peace and stability, and for the peace of our liberation from terrorism and extremism.
Will the Zionist lobby, which has a very strong influence in the United States, will the Zionist lobby allow this to happen?
They cannot allow Arab presidents or Arab League to go and meet Trump, at least to explain their point of view. And I believe that they will have strong arguments to convince a man, because there is here a common background. What is the common background? All of us are against terrorism, against extremism. We agree. We Arabs agree. We are representing the Arab peoples. And we tell you, we shake hands with you concerning this point. But if you want to apply your theory or your dream to get rid or eradicate terrorism from this region of the world, which is exporting terrorism to other places in the world, so help us to solve the Palestinian question for the sake of stability and to guarantee that this region will be more powerful in fighting against terrorism. That's my point of view.
Will they be allowed to do this? Should we actually get together and have this committee that you're talking? I mean, the problem starts here that you need this committee.
Yeah.
a strongly formed representative committee to go and do this. But let us consider that we overcame the first hurdle and this committee went. Will they be allowed to actually voice this, to outreach to Trump?
Trump will receive them, and he will listen to them. That's what I want. Of course, I don't guarantee what decision he will take after that. But at least, so as to be honest with our plan. For example, now you heard, as you said, a few minutes ago, you said that the new U.S. administration will take a step against the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Congress started to discuss such things. I'm happy to hear that our parliament prepared documents to go to the United States with such documents to clarify things to the members of the Congress. That's the same thing which we must do concerning the Palestinian question with Donald Trump. It's our responsibility as Arabs and as Arab League and as Arab governments. I believe that since there is a logic here, because look, the man has a certain logic which is not bad. For example, when he said, another example, and I agree with what he said and I hope that he will fulfill it. NATO is out of date. Very good. That's the first president since the starting of the Cold War to say such a thing. When he said that, what problem we have with Bashar al-Assad? We have no problem with him. Why we don't cooperate with the Syrian army against terrorism and terrorists? Good. So we have to build upon such statements because it is in our favor, Dina. It is in our favor. We have to develop it.
And this has to be done immediately?
Yes.
Before you leave the floor open for someone else to step in?
I again want to remind you that Netanyahu demanded 12 times a meeting with Donald Trump.
The fact that Trump did not respond positively so far is a sign of what? What message is he giving?
I believe that he wants to hear not only Netanyahu, but the other side. So we have the chance to fulfill his hidden wish. Why not? To help him. And the atmosphere now in the United States is quite different than before, because before we had, frankly speaking, Barack Obama was supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. Hillary Clinton supported
strongly supporting. Extremely strongly supporting.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. So now they are not the decision makers in the United States, and that is positive for us.
What are we forecasting as future relations between Russia and the United States? I mean, this is throughout modern history. Russia and the United States were always on different sides.
I believe that was because, first of all, the ideology, because there was the communist Soviet Union and the capitalist United States, and every camp wanted to prevail his ideology. Now it is finished.
Now this is no longer the case, but we still have divisions.
These divisions, I cannot bear the responsibility of such divisions to the Russia. Why? Since Putin is ready to cooperate with America, I want to remind you with another crime committed by Obama and his administration. I want to remind you with an agreement, very clear, explicit agreement between Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and John Kerry, the Secretary of State in the United States. Agreement concerning Syria. 1, 2, 3. And Kerry approved. But he withdrew his approval. Why? Because, as Donald Trump himself said it frankly, Obama, who is the man who created ISIS, supported ISIS, and that's true. We have to be very clear about it. Setting
And
this
will
point.
Trump destroy what Obama created?
Yes. Yes. Because he is well aware that if you do not fight terrorism in Syria, Iraq, Libya, everywhere in the Arab world, they will go to the United States and make terrorist attacks. And it started.
But
And it could be more than that.
But don't forget, or we should not be forgetting, that certain countries are backing ISIS
Yeah.
and backing those militant groups, which, in my personal opinion, are different names to the same thing.
But now they are bankrupt. I understand what you mean. What exactly?
Will Trump stand against those countries?
Yes, I'm sure of that. And he said it.
This triangle that is funding those countries, those
I want to
organizations?
remind you with the report of the investigation committee established by the Congress about September 9/11. It was clear that they are not ready to permit any country in the world to export extremism or terrorists to their country.
But they have permitted it and allowed it.
Because there was Obama. Now he will leave after tomorrow. It's finished. The same thing, by the way, concerning Russia. Because as I told you, maybe I told you before, I don't remember exactly, when I was in Moscow last year, I met the president or the chairman of the Duma, the Russian parliament. He said to me frankly, we have 4,000 Russian terrorists fighting in Syria. We will not permit them to come back.
4,000.
Yeah. Those countries...
This is just one nationality.
Yeah. Those countries started to understand how extremism, terrorism is dangerous and threatening the human race. That's why let the United States of America for the first time to stop thinking about arms race, Cold War, confrontation with Russia, and to replace, instead of that, cooperation and what we this word which was forgotten and neglected, détente.
Oh.
You remember?
Old words.
Yeah.
If we speak frankly, Qatar has been stepping out of the norm of this region, and it has been strongly backing the US administration's policies in this region, actually carrying them out. Now that we have a new government in office, and it seems the policies might differ if we take into account how things are progressing, what will the Qatari position be?
Now, Qatar is in a very embarrassed and critical situation. Why? You remember the news conference made by the foreign minister of Qatar? He said something very strange. He said that since 2 weeks, approximately, he said, in a very few words, he said, if the United States arming the organizations fighting in Syria, Qatar will arm them. Will give them arms, including missiles on the shoulder to shoot the Russian or Syrian planes, aircraft. I believe that this real proof that this country became bankrupt. Now there is no United States of America. Even Turkey was obliged to cooperate with Russia after cooperating with the Turks and permitting them to use the Turkish-Syrian borders to infiltrate inside Syria to fight against the Syrian people and the Syrian army. Now it's finished. It means that Qatar have no job now to do. Jobless. Finished. There is no Obama administration. There is no Turkish sponsors. There is nothing.
So speaking of no Turkish
And by
spots-
the way, allow me to add this. And the Russians and Turkish succeeded in a very important step, very recent, to make a split among those organizations fighting in Syria. The proof is that some of them agreed to ceasefire, and they will go to Astana. Some accept. So, what the Russians were demanding from America to do, and America didn't do, the Russians did it. To separate some certain organizations from other organizations, to make this split. And that's good for the sake of peace in Syria.
Is that also a reason why Turkey's policies somehow seem to be differing or moving in a different direction?
Yes, it's different.
Is Erdogan taking a step back?
Yes, he was at first following an anti-Russian policy. Now, the contrary. He was following a policy to support terrorists in Syria. And now Turkey itself is suffering from terrorist attacks. So things became different now. Things are developing in another direction, which is different from the last period.
Before we wrap up, one of the important issues that we have to question is the United States, and I think it's safe to say for the first time in quite some time, is quite divided. The American rank and file is divided. Will Donald Trump be able to reunite the fabric of the American society again?
It depends, because I'll tell you frankly, now there are a study which his closest advisors are making. What sort of study? Maybe you will be astonished. A purge in the CIA. Purge.
Purge in the
Yes.
CIA.
Now, many people in the United States of America started to think in the following way. Why such people are politicized in this way, interfering in the internal policy of the U.S. administration? Why they are not abroad? Because the main job of the CIA is to fight against espionage.
To work outside.
Yes.
Now, on the FBI.
Now there is a statistics to prove that most of them working in the CIA didn't leave the United States of America at all. So what? Second, because now, as I told you before, there is this report made by the CIA. Imagine, for example,
You have 1 minute left. So.
yeah, you heard about the latest scandal fabricated by the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. They fabricated that Donald Trump, in his visit to Moscow, in an hotel, there are sexual scandals. Who brought this scandal to the U.S. media? Former spy for the M16, the British intelligence. He is known as a man of bad reputation, and the Russians said, all these are fabrications, there is nothing like that. Of course, Donald Trump denied all that. And they didn't give even one name in their report about the characters of this scandal or those people who participated in fabricating this scandal or doing what they pretended that it took place. So I believe that it's a war, but it depends. The future of the United States, by the way, if Donald Trump succeeded to avoid pressure from all these forces fighting against him, not only the United States will change,
The world.
The world will change.
Definitely.
Yes.
Mr. Nabil Zaki, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much for your fruitful input, and maybe soon we can have a show about the rising tiger China.
Okay.
And how will Russia-US combination stand in front of that strong power which is on the rise. We wish you a very pleasant evening. Tomorrow another day and another debate, and good night.